Any discovery of a Roman dodecahedron is remarkable and unusual, because there's not many more than 100 known to exist.
After centuries of silence, the Roman dodecahedron has finally given up its purpose. The decoding did not come from a historian or a translator or a Roman text. It came from a mass spectrometer, reading the residue locked inside a perfectly preserved specimen pulled from sealed ground in Lincolnshire. What the lab found in late 2024 is the reason the Roman Empire never wrote a single word about these objects in 2,000 years.
There is still a huge amount of mystery around these very peculiar objects, but one of the most popular theories is that it had a more mystical function.
And it is the reason several European museums quietly pulled their specimens off display in 2025. The object Rome refused to explain. The Roman Empire wrote everything down: aqueducts, military roads, grain invoices issued to legions on the frontier, the exact dimensions of every standard weight, the chemistry of mortars, the names of contractors paid to lay roof tiles. The manuals of Vitruvius and Pliny the Elder cataloged the empire's machinery in obsessive detail, down to which timber to use for which kind of water wheel. If Rome made it, Rome wrote about it, except this. The object is a hollow 12-faced bronze polyhedron, 12 pentagonal sides, each pierced with a circular hole of different diameter.
Through the hole on one side, whatever the other side you're looking through is a different diameter hole.
20 small spherical knobs at the corners, cast using the lost wax technique at its most advanced. Extreme furnace temperatures, precise alloy work, hours of skilled labor per piece. The kind of bronze production that required a master craftsman, a dedicated workshop, and serious metal stock. Each one was expensive, each one was deliberate, none of them were quick. More than 130 examples have now been pulled from the soil of the old northern frontier. No two are identical. The sizes vary. Some fit in the palm of a hand. Others are nearly the size of a softball. The hole diameters vary within a single object. The thickness of the walls varies. The weight varies. But every single one shares one impossible feature. No inscription. No measurement mark. No maker's stamp. No owner mark. Nothing. In an empire that stamped its ownership on every brick and every coin, that cataloged every weight, every tool, every weapon, the dodecahedron has zero documentation. It does not appear in a single Roman mural, not in any sculpture, not in any administrative ledger or letter, not in any military manual, not in any inventory recovered from any villa, fort, or workshop in 2 centuries of European excavation. Roman scholars who wrote thousands of pages about minor household objects, oil lamps, hairpins, kitchen ladles, the design of locks on doors, never once mentioned the thing. That is not an oversight.
Strange about them is that there is no record of what they were used for.
You do not produce 130-plus expensive bronze objects across multiple provinces over multiple generations and forget to write any of them down. Someone made sure the record stayed empty. Whoever owned these things kept them off paper on purpose, and whoever found one and survived the encounter learned quickly not to talk about it either. And then someone took one of these objects, intact and unbroken, and buried it. The sealed pit at Norton Disney. Most Roman bronze surfaces through amateur detectorists, plowed up fields, disturbed riverbeds, topsoil churned by centuries of farming. Half the famous finds from the Roman provinces came up in someone's vegetable garden. Norton Disney was nothing like that. The Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group excavated it under professional archaeological supervision in Lincolnshire, England, pulling it out of a sealed context, a pocket of soil that had not been disturbed since the day the dodecahedron went into it. No later digging cut through, no flood shifted it, no plow blade dragged across the layer. The stratigraphy was untouched. Coins and pottery sherds in the same deposit dated to the 2nd to 4th century, locking the burial to the height of Roman occupation in Britain. Nothing moved for almost 2,000 years. The object did not fall there. Someone placed it, carefully, surrounded by pottery fragments and a small cluster of ancient coins, the kind of grouping that signals a deliberate deposit rather than an accidental loss. Then they covered it over and walked away. And here is what made the find detonate. The patina is smooth, no cracks, no wear, no chipping on any of the 20 knobs, no evidence of being melted down for scrap, no bend in the metal. The bronze looks like it was cast last week. Members of the excavation crew said handling it felt wrong, too clean, too crisp, too intact for something supposed to have been underground since the 2nd century. In the ancient world, bronze was currency. Broken pieces were melted down within days and reforged into tools, weapons, fittings. A fully functional, expensive bronze object did not go into a deep pit and stay there unless someone needed it gone. If the owner had been hiding it from thieves or invaders, the way Romans hid coin hoards across the same provinces, they would have marked the spot and returned. The coin hoards always came back. This one did not. Nobody returned. Whoever buried this thing did not want it back. They wanted it out of reach forever.
Large, impractical for a currency. There aren't any identifiable and repeating symbols.
Which raises a question the Romans did everything possible to prevent anyone asking. What was inside it? What the lab found? Across late 2024 and into 2025, the Norton Disney specimen and several other well-preserved dodecahedrons from frontier sites went into a laboratory. Mass spectrometry, radiometric isotope analysis, chemistry impossible a generation ago. The team coordinated through the Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group and partner institutions, and they did not bother with the outer surface. They went straight into the hollow interior. They extracted microscopic organic molecules locked inside the porous metal since the day the object was last used. The first result rewrote the object's biography. The residue profile came back as stearic acid, a form of animal fat altered by sustained heat, combined with pine resin and lavender oil, 3 substances tied to Iron Age and Romano-Celtic funerary practice: fuel, ritual purification, scented smoke, embalming materials. The animal fat had been burned hot. The interior of the dodecahedron had held fire. Then came the second result, and the second result is what makes the chemistry monstrous. Mixed into the burnt fat were high concentrations of calcium phosphate combined with carbon microparticles. Isotopic analysis traced the calcium phosphate to one origin and one origin only: cremated human bone. This was not cemetery contamination. The bone had not seeped in from surrounding soil. The chemistry told a precise story. Calcium phosphate fuses with carbon microparticles in this exact pattern only when bone is exposed to sustained fire in the presence of organic fat. The fusion happens during combustion, not after burial, which means the bone was inside the dodecahedron while it burned, repeatedly. The Roman dodecahedron is not a measuring instrument. It is not a candle holder. It is not a decorative form. It is an object that was loaded with the cremated remains of dead people and animal fat and incense resin, ignited and used. One member of the team, looking at the chromatography readout, said the field discovery had been one thing. Reading the lab numbers was another thing entirely. This is where the dodecahedron stops being an archaeology problem and becomes a forensic one. Because in both Roman and Celtic funerary tradition, human ashes were sacred. After cremation, bone fragments were collected with care and sealed inside tightly closed ceramic or glass urns, protected from wind and moisture. The integrity of the remains mattered. Preservation of the dead was essential for the afterlife. The dodecahedron does the opposite. It is open on every face. 12 holes lead directly into its core. Ashes placed inside cannot be contained. A single breath of air disperses them. Whoever made this object did not want the dead preserved. They wanted the dead released.
There is still a huge amount of mystery around these very peculiar objects, but one of the most popular theories is that it had a more mystical function.
If you're still with me on this one, here's the deal. Most channels would stop here, post a clickbait theory, and move on. We're going deeper into how this thing actually worked, and why Rome went to specific lengths to erase it. Subscribe and drop a comment telling me which buried artifact you want me to dig into next, because there are more of these still in the ground. Every practical theory just died. 2 centuries of researchers have tried to make this object behave. Candle holder, glove knitting tool, standard weight for merchants, range-finding device for Roman artillery, surveyor's instrument, pocket sundial, toy, religious medallion, coin testing device. Every theory tested, every theory dead. every one of them invented to explain away what the chemistry now confirms. Candle holder collapses on contact. The faces are pierced with open holes. No surface can retain melted wax. No specimen shows soot on the interior. No burn marks on the outer metal. No heat discoloration on any of the 130 plus examples examined. The wax traces some. Researchers cited came from the surrounding soil. The theory survived only because it was the most comforting option. Knitting tool dies just as fast. You can loop yarn through the knobs, sure. Modern demonstrations on YouTube prove it. But Roman textile work ran on nail binding, a single needle and a ball of thread. There is no Roman documentation of any tubular knitting technique, and a handheld knitting tool gets used daily. The surface would show abrasion on the hole edges, polishing on the knobs, microfibers of wool inside the cavity. None of the 130 plus specimens show any of it. The knobs are pristine, the hole rims are sharp. Whatever this object did, it did not pass through human hands every day. Rangefinder, surveyor, coin tester, all three die on standardization. A military rangefinder needs precise calibration. No two dodecahedrons share dimensions. The 12 holes within a single object follow no consistent ratio. There are no alignment marks, no fixed axis, no reference point. Roman surveyors already had the chroma, documented in writing, depicted in art, buried beside surveyors in marked graves. The dodecahedron is in none of those places. Coin testers use standardized holes matching the coins of the realm, denarius, sestertius, as. The dodecahedron's holes match nothing in any known Roman coinage. The sundial theory falls flat. No gnomon, no hour lines, no shadow markings anywhere on the surface. You cannot tell time with a thing that has no fixed orientation. The forensic chemistry just buried these theories for good. You don't fill a coin tester with cremated human remains. You don't burn animal fat and pine resin inside a sundial. You don't ignite organic material inside a calibrated military instrument.
I do veer towards the very practical explanation, and that is that it was a sort of knitting device.
And then bury it intact in sacred ground. Every clean secular explanation died in the lab. What's left is the thing those explanations were invented to avoid: the combustion chamber. Stop looking at the holes as flaws. Start looking at them as engineering. A monastic folklore tradition, preserved in a 12th century Latin manuscript in a remote European monastery, and dismissed for centuries as medieval embellishment, describes a sacred sphere pierced across 12 faces and crowned at its points, used by local priests to hear the voices of those who sleep within stone. Hold that text against the Norton Disney chemistry. The match is too close to ignore. 12 pierced faces, crowned points, the knobs. A device priests carried into ritual spaces. A device used to communicate with the dead. The dodecahedron is not a container. It is a combustion chamber. 12 sides, 12 openings of varying diameters across opposing faces. That geometry is not decorative. It is functional. The varied openings regulate the intake of oxygen, sustaining combustion inside the hollow core, while directing the movement of heat, scent, and smoke. The asymmetric hole sizing is not a manufacturing defect. It is the entire point of the design. Ignite a mixture of animal fat, pine resin, and human ash inside the chamber. The fat fuels sustained heat. Animal fat burns hot and slow, the way candle tallow does, but with more smoke. The resin produces dense particulate smoke loaded with aromatic compounds. The ash rides the smoke. As heated air carrying those particles is forced through the smaller openings at the top of the object, pressure accelerates the flow, releasing the smoke in narrow directed streams instead of a formless cloud. Different hole sizes produce different stream velocities. The flame inside flickers between openings, pulling air through some, pushing smoke out others. The whole object breathes. The 20 spherical knobs at the vertices are not decoration. They lift the object off the surface it rests on, allowing continuous airflow to enter from below. The knobs are legs. Without them, the chamber suffocates and the fire dies. With them, oxygen feeds the combustion from underneath. The flame stays hot. The smoke keeps moving. Now, place the device where it was meant to be used. An enclosed space, a tent, a cave, a sealed burial chamber with a single low ventilation opening that controls the airflow into the room. The dodecahedron sits at the center, lifted on its 20 knobs. The mixture inside is lit. What happens is not an ordinary fire. The smoke from the burning human remains, animal fat, and aromatic resins does not disperse randomly. It is shaped, channeled through the 12 openings, projected into the space in symmetrical twisting columns of gray-white smoke, while shifting pentagonal shadows crawl across the walls of the chamber in time with the flame inside the bronze.
That the dodecahedron was itself a mirror of the shape of the universe.
Those columns of smoke carried the dead, not metaphorically, literally. Microscopic bone particles riding hot air, dispersed at controlled angles, filling a small enclosed room with a haze of cremated remains. The participants did not just watch the smoke, they breathed it. The remains of the dead entered the lungs of the living, pulled in with every inhale, absorbed into the bloodstream of every person in the room. The intended effect was psychological, spiritual, physiological, what later language would call a necromantic rite. This object was not built to honor the dead, it was built to release them, and to put them inside the people who came to be near them. The hidden border and the cover-up. Now look at the map. Every one of the 130-plus surviving dodecahedrons clusters along the northern and northwestern edge of the Roman Empire, modern Gaul, Germania, Britannia, none in the Italian peninsula, none in Spain, none in Egypt or Syria, none in any provincial capital, workshop city, or central military camp. They appear near old burial grounds, shallow river crossings, wells, and natural boundaries between farmland and deep forest. The exact places Celtic tradition treated as thresholds between the living and the dead. This was the frontier, the borderland where Celtic ritual, Druidic practice, and indigenous spiritual systems kept moving quietly under Roman occupation. The dodecahedron is a frontier object because it was a frontier practice. Rome had laws for what happened on the frontier. The Lex Cornelia criminalized unsanctioned religious practice, magic, divination, and communication with the dead. In some cases, punishable by execution. Roman military forces moved against Druidic priesthoods in Britannia. The destruction of the Druidic stronghold on Anglesey in the 1st century is one of the most infamous campaigns of the early empire. Rome was not silent about the dodecahedron because Rome did not know it existed. Rome was silent because writing it down was a crime. That is why the Norton Disney specimen was buried intact. The owner could not melt it without raising questions, could not pass it on without exposing whoever received it, could not destroy it without leaving traces. The only safe option was a deep pit, careful placement, and absolute silence. And the silence did not end with Rome. Following internal reports in 2025 confirming calcium phosphate residues and burnt human bone inside several well-preserved specimens,
Perhaps it was used in divination or sorcery or fortune-telling.
local museums across Europe quietly pulled their dodecahedrons from public display, citing conservation reassessment. This is not new behavior. The British Museum kept its dodecahedron in storage for decades, declining to exhibit it publicly until 2014. In the Netherlands, a national museum labeled its specimen a Roman weight for years, despite the obvious inconsistency with any standard Roman weight system, because that label let them avoid explaining an artifact that did not fit. The deeper problem is what the chemistry implies about who actually built it. Western history has long sold the Roman Empire as the pinnacle of rationality and engineering. If the dodecahedron originates not from Roman science, but from pre-Roman indigenous tradition, from frontier peoples who had worked out, through centuries of empirical trial, how to use controlled combustion and geometric airflow to disperse cremated human remains in a precise, repeatable way, then the empire's primary claim falls apart. Rome was not the inventor. Rome was the censor. Rome encountered a technology it could not match, criminalized the people who used it, and refused to put it on paper. Right now, in 2025, the specimens are coming off display. The frontier soil still holds an unknown number of them, buried by people who knew exactly what they had. The dodecahedrons that have surfaced sit in storage rooms behind locked doors, and the labels on the empty display cases say nothing about what the chemistry showed. The smoke that once filled those small enclosed rooms, the smoke that carried the dead into the lungs of the living, has been gone for 2,000 years. We still don't know what it was supposed to do to them. Ritual hardware or a practical tool we still haven't figured out. Which is it? Drop your answer in the comments. Next week, we're going after another object the official record refuses to explain.